football.
Welcome in to Purple Daily. Phil Mackey, Judd Zulgad, and Declan Goff producing on this episode. And we got to get into a little interdivision drama here with the Minnesota Vikings and Green Bay Packers and notable free agent Everson Griffen. We'll get to that after a quick thank you to Dennis Kirk. Dennis Kirk has helped to power Purple Daily and multiple things here at Score North over the past several months. And Dennis Kirk is a Minnesota-based worldwide retailer of parts, accessories, and apparel for avid bikers of all kinds. We're talking Harleys, cruisers, sport bikes. You ride a dirt bike, any other type of motorcycle, and Dennis Kirk has what you need. Plus, Dennis Kirk has extended their offer of 0% interest for up to 12 months. They truly are the best in the business. Order by 8 p.m. Get it tomorrow. $89 orders, ship free at DennisKirk.com. So Everson Griffen's still a free agent. The Vikings, even going into the week, were short on, I would say, proven quality defensive linemen. Like there's a lot of question marks right now. I think the Vikings kind of know what they have in Shamar Stephen as an interior defensive lineman. Jaleel Johnson, just kind of a guy, it feels like. It feels like the outside of Danielle Hunter, it feels like the upside along the defensive line is not, now that Michael Pierce is opting out of the season. Armin Watts has shown some potential, and there's some upside there. Adenabo had 7 sacks last season in limited snaps, which is a good sign. But ultimately, the only established defensive lineman right now for the Vikings is Danielle Hunter. And, Judd, I think you can probably go back 15 years. There might be a year like post-Jared Allen and pre-Danielle Hunter where maybe Everson Griffen was the only standout defensive lineman. But even then, they always had Brian Robinson. They've always had at least 2 guys on that defensive line that you felt like were trustworthy, were impactful.
For a while now, yes.
Up until the Williams wall came along. So this is the first time that they've only had one reliable guy on paper. So Everson Griffen, there's rumors that the Packers might be interested now in Everson Griffen. The Vikings have cleared a few $1 million of extra cap space for 2020 with Pierce sitting out and tolling his contract into next year. So what do you make of this? How aggressive would you be pursuing Everson Griffen, and how would you feel if he became a Green Bay Packer when it was all said and done?
That would be fun. I think that the majority of Viking fans would absolutely hate that. But let's back up here and go through what's ordinary and what's not, okay? Ordinarily, I'd say Griffen's still good. He's still productive, but he's not a kid now, and it's the type of player who, if he walks and goes to a different team, you're probably getting out a year or two too soon, but that's fine. And Adenabo steps in, had 7 sacks? I believe he was 3rd on the team in 2019. Yeah. And you know what? He steps in, and who knows? We have seen guys on this defensive line, especially with Mike as coach, emerge, right? And become really, really good. I mean, Hunter was, a 3rd-round pick? And he has emerged into an elite, top-notch player. So ordinarily, I'd say if Pierce was there, that things are flowing as normal as possible. But then it got interesting on Saturday because Pierce probably had told the Vikings at some point in time in the last week or so that because of his underlying health condition that he was likely going to opt out, which he had the right to do because of COVID-19. So Zim's probably known that for, let's say, a week, okay? Like he's probably going to, which is, for Pierce's sake, the right call.
Yeah.
Saturday, in the Zoom call that Mike did talking about his new contract, he was asked by a reporter about Griffen. And Mike does things for a purpose. Like Mike is not a subtle dude, all right? So he starts talking about, he sent me a text congratulating me on my contract extension. I'd love to have him back, blah, blah, blah. Which essentially was a nudge to Spielman to at least try and get him back.
Yeah.
And on Saturday, I'm like, oh, that's intriguing. I guess I get it, sort of. But then Pierce opts out. And I know that Pierce is a nose tackle. But to what you're saying, the Vikings are clearly likely going to have to get creative about defensive line schematics in 2020 right now, correct? Mm-hmm. So not that Griffen would come in and replace Pierce, but Griffen and Hunter both proved in the Saints game that in passing downs, they can be super effective inside. So in trying to put the pieces of this puzzle together now, and to go back to the question of Griffen possibly returning to the Vikings for this season, I do wonder if Zimmer was giving Spielman a nudge to say, at least if I've got Griffen back, I've got some depth, and I can get creative then. Because right now you do look at this line, and especially the interior, Shamar Stephen is a guy. Jalil Johnson, same thing, is a guy. Armin Watts might be good, but right now we don't know. It all sort of makes sense that bringing Griffen back would give you a little bit familiarity and depth that you probably feel today that if we do play 2020, you're lacking.
Yeah, I mean, Jalen Holmes is in the mix for young depth. They signed Anthony Zettel as a free agent, as an edge rusher. But in general, depth is the key word here. And so my first thought when it came down to just value is, all right, let's look at Everson Griffen and Adenabo just sort of side by side, and let's you can look at the sack totals and say, well, Adenabo had 7 sacks and Griffen had 9, and Griffen played over twice as many snaps, and like that right there on its face would say, well, I mean, you can pretty much get the same production. If you dig a little deeper, the story is kind of the same. If you look into Pro Football Focus numbers, for instance, Everson Griffen played 850 snaps to Adenabo's 368. So Adenabo played less than half the snaps of Everson Griffen. They had nearly identical overall defensive grades according to Pro Football Focus, and they had nearly identical pass rushing grades according to Pro Football Focus. Now, Everson Griffen created more quarterback hurries than Adenabo did, but Adenabo got home a higher percentage of the time in his hurries than Griffen did. Some of that can be chance and luck and circumstance, but if you're just comparing those two players, and one might cost you millions, one might cost you 700,000 or whatever it is that I don't have Adenabo's contract pulled up, but he was, put it this way, he wasn't, he's a 7th round draft pick. Tag. Yes, he's not making $10 million.
Yes.
You can make a very strong case that value-wise, just go with the 25-year-old guy that is still on the upswing that could maybe, if you give him a full season.
Sure.
But then the question becomes, wait a second, because of just injuries and attrition and the natural rotation of defensive linemen in a game, like you still need a 3rd and 4th edge rusher. Adenabo, as the 3rd edge rusher, played 368 snaps last year. Well, who steps up into his role? If Griffen's not on the team and Adenabo steps up and plays the starter snaps, okay, well, you still need someone to play like 400 snaps as a rotational guy. Depth is the key here. And so if you can bring Everson Griffen back, I don't think it means that you would have to suppress Adenabo's chances to maybe thrive as a 25-year-old emerging into his prime. But I think it would benefit the Vikings greatly to just have another competent and trustworthy defensive lineman here going into a season in which they only really have one.
Right, so, and if you bring Griffen back, it's got to be on a 1-year contract on your terms. So if he says, I got to make blah, 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 you got to say no. But to delve deeper into what you're talking about here and what makes this conversation a little bit more dicey and tricky is in Zimmer's defense, quarterback hurries are probably almost, if not as important as sacks, because the whole thing is to pressure the quarterback to get the ball out too quickly at times, right? Yeah. To benefit the secondary and the second tier. And so if you get pressure, that is in his mind, I think, almost as valuable as sacks. Now, let's consider this question too. Adenabo might be a good player, but the unknown here is going to be this day one if Adenabo and Hunter are your 2 ends. Go back and watch games when Griffen's been playing well and look at the attention that opposing offensive minds have had to pay to him lining up at right end, which, by the way, is the key end, okay? They have had to pay a lot of attention, double team him, and chip him. That at times has put Hunter against a right tackle and at times a tight end, okay? Or it's put him against tight ends. Tight end can't block him. If I remove Griffen completely from the occasion or from the equation and Adenabo's there, and let's say he's good but not great. And now if I'm an opposing OC, what am I going to say?
Yeah.
I'm going to say Danielle Hunter 24/7. And we'll worry about Adenabo, and he'll probably get his, but it's not going to be the threat that Griffen presented to us previously. Well, now I have potentially weakened Hunter's role. Not that he's not going to be good, but you guys, he's had 14.5 sacks in each of the past 2 years, okay? Yeah. That's outstanding. So I think what Zim might be doing, too, is trying to get the message across that Griffen still has to be paid attention to. And look, non-pandemic, Griffen's gone quickly, right? He's probably signed in March. He's for sure, I think, signed pre-draft in April. He's still there. If you're Zim and you have 2 new corners, or actually 3, including the nickel, the interior of your defensive line is a big question mark, and the gift is given, hey, Griffen can come back for 1 year. You as a coach and defensive scheme guy are probably going to jump.
Yeah. I think, man, it just feels like Everson Griffen probably has another year or 2 left of high caliber play too. He's not the same guy he was 3 or 4 years ago, but he had a resurgence last year. And he's the type of guy, if you have to see him twice in the division, if he does go sign with the Green Bay Packers and you're left without Michael Pierce, and so you're left with at least 1 experiment on the interior, maybe 2 experiments, and kind of an experiment at the other edge rusher spot, and the Packers now have 2 absolute fortified cornerstone guys
and a stud inside. I mean,
it doesn't. I don't like that taste if you're the Vikings. And so and by the way, I tracked this down too in terms of what. So they came into training camp before Michael Pierce opted out with around $7 million in cap space after the draft picks were signed. And so if you go by what the Pioneer Press wrote yesterday, they quoted something from Jason Fitzgerald, salary cap analyst Jason Fitzgerald, said Pierce's cap number will be $2 million in 2020, which is a third of his $6 million signing bonus from last March. His cap number is going to be $2 million this season. It would have been $5 million. Mm-hmm. So the Vikings saved $3 million to the cap with Pierce out. And I'd have to go back and make sure that this is accurate according to overthecap.com. But I believe that bumps their cap room up to $10 million after signing rookies from the draft for Everson Griffen or whoever it may be. I think you can get Everson Griffen, even if they are, one thing to consider here too is if they're going to sign Dalvin Cook to a contract extension, how much of that signing bonus and that money are they going to roll up in 2020? Right. Because his cap number is only $2 million for 2020. Are they looking to use some of the room that they have for additional, money to Dalvin Cook? How much could they give to Everson Griffen? These are all things that they're trying to figure out right now.
That's tough. If I bring Griffen back on my terms, 1-year contract, I love that. That's fine. The problem with going down the path of Cook is not 2020, it's 21. And I think that they have set, so I believe that the cap going into 2020, if I'm not mistaken, Phil, is 198. Is that correct?
Yes.
And it is going to go down. So the floor of the agreed to cap that they did because of COVID-19 is 175. That's the floor. So, we might be going back a lot. So the Cook extension to me does not scare me a bit for this season. It scares me for future years. But if I can get a veteran guy like Griffen back on a reasonable 1-year contract right now, I'm doing that. The circumstances have changed. So, yes, I would jump at the opportunity if Griffen is still here and is I'll come back. 1 year, pick your figure. I would definitely jump at that chance because it goes back to what we discussed at the outset of this show, which is also depth. It gives you depth. And it gives you choices.
Yeah, and you might be able to find ways to use all 3 of your pass rushers in certain third down situations like we've seen, especially late in the year last year. The Vikings
didn't that Saints game intrigue you?
Yes.
That Saints game really intrigued me because to me, that formula works. And opposing teams can prepare for it, but that's still some pretty talented players. Mm-hmm. So, okay, they're prepared next time, but that doesn't mean that they're going to stop you for sure. Mm-hmm. So that really intrigued me, what they did against the Saints in that first-round playoff game.
So Everson Griffen, he might be choosing between the Packers and the Vikings here in the next couple weeks.
Him in green and gold.
It would look weird.
I would not like it.
But, honestly, after 2009... it's bound to happen at some point where
they don't really do that
Vikings
much.
Player goes over to Green Bay.
They don't do that too much
and sticks it back.
We love it.
I feel like 2009 has bought us in the Twin Cities and Vikings fans 20 years of not being able to complain if a Vikings player goes and plays for the Packers and still has some left in the tank.
Aaron's coming. He's going to be in purple. You know what's going to happen.
I can't wait.
He's going to look so great in purple.
12.
And you know what he's going to do? He is going to have an MVP like Favre 2009. He is going to carve up the Packers defense.
He's going to have a veteran Adam Thielen in a couple years. He's going to have Justin Jefferson.
I was going to say Jefferson's going to be good. Yes.
Justin Jefferson is going to catch probably 12 or 13 touchdown passes from Rodgers in 2022. He's going to go for 1,500 yards in a season. He's going to catch. He's going to catch 120 I can already see the numbers.
Getting me
It's going to
excited.
be amazing.
Come on, bring it on.
We will do at some point here, maybe in the next day or two, an episode on what Aaron Rodgers told The Ringer. It's very juicy. He used past tense, was looking forward to being a Packer my whole career.
Yeah. Which means I am looking forward to carving up the Packers as a Viking. That's what that means.
That's how I translated it.
That's what that means.
like that?
Didn't say it.
You like that?
Oh, Kirk, it's no
Where's
offense
Kirk?
to you. It's no offense to
Where's
Kirk.
Kirk then?
Kirk is rich. Kirk is playing for another team at that point.
No, I know, but where?
Well, who's going to need a quarterback in like 2 years?
Detroit.
Kirk would be great in Detroit. Go back where you played
Michigan.
college
Yeah.
football.
Yeah?
Yeah,
I'm guessing he's from Michigan originally
I
too.
believe so.
right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah, that would be great.
You know where else he could
Hometown
be?
hero.
He could be a Bear. He's from
Actually,
he's
yeah.
from
He'd
Illinois,
be the
from
greatest
Barrington.
quarterback in Bears history the minute he stepped foot into Soldier Field.
Sid
Move
Luckman's,
over, Sid Luckman.
Sid Luckman's pissed at you for saying that.
Honestly, like legit question. If Kirk Cousins became the Bears quarterback tomorrow, he's the greatest, right? He's the greatest quarterback in Bears history tomorrow.
In modern era, I mean, I didn't see Sid play. Might have been fantastic, okay?
I mean, let's take Sid Luckman in the 1940s out of the
That's what I'm
equation for
saying.
a second.
The modern era
He's better
is,
than Jay Cutler.
is Cutler. It would be Cutler,
Cutler's got a better arm. And
McMahon.
he's better than
Yeah,
Cutler.
you might be right.
Cutler.
They're
like
the same
Cutler.
vein.
They're very different though. I think Cutler has more of like a big arm gamble to him,
Sure.
and I think Cutler's more mobile too.
They're
than-
very different people, too.
very different people. They're both in the same tier of quarterbacks.
Yeah.
They're
Kirk,
both,
Kirk cares too much. Jay didn't care enough. That's basically those two personality-wise in a nutshell.
amazing. What a division. 2022. Aaron Rodgers here,
Rodgers in
Kirk
purple.
Cousins with the Vikings. That's a wrap on this episode of Purple Daily. Thanks for hanging out with us, and we will see you next time.